Recent remarks by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas noting the institutional damage caused by the leak of Justice Samuel Alito's opinion on Roe v. Wade has gotten exhaustive coverage in the press. But not surprisingly, the venue where Justice Thomas made those remarks has gotten very little attention by the same journalist. The event was a convening of the nation's leading Black conservative intellectuals from academia, policy institutes, media, and it was to focus on, as explained in the press release from one of the institutional sponsors, the American Enterprise Institute, why, end quote, despite decades of affirmative action programs, wealth distribution schemes, and other well-intended government efforts, racial gaps in educational achievement, employment, income, family formation, and crime persist, end quote. The venue, Old Parkland in Dallas, was provided through the generosity of Texas businessman Harlan Crow. The Old Parkland Conference was inspired as a reconvening of a similar effort organized by economist Thomas Sowell in December 1980 at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. It was a pioneering effort, the first of its kind. In 1980, Sowell was already making his mark, challenging what had become conventional wisdom that it was essential for government to play a central role in dealing with challenges facing Black Americans. Sowell, who began his career seeing the world from a perspective of the left, changed. He was once asked in an interview what drove his transformation in perspective from left to right, and he answered, facts. The Old Parkland Conference that was organized and hosted by 4 of America's leading conservative Black thinkers. I was actually at that conference. We had Brown University economist Glenn Lowry, Jason Riley of the Wall Street Journal, Ian Rowe of American Enterprise Institute, and Shelby Steele of Stanford University's Hoover Institution. 3 days of speeches and panels covering a gamut of today's racial discussions.
I'm very glad to be with all the rest of the outcasts here tonight.
You know, looking over those who presented at the 1980 Fairmont Conference, we see greats who no longer even with us. Greats like the late economist Walter Williams and economist Milton Friedman. You know, the topic of Milton Friedman's presentation then says it all. Said it all then and says it all today. Government is the problem. One attendee of both events, the Old Parkland Conference attended, as well as the Fairmont Conference in 1980, is Clarence Thomas, who attended in 1980 as a young congressional aide. The analysis and conclusions of Tom Sowell and others 40 years ago at the Fairmont Conference were correct. They saw then that human lives are not liberated by government programs and policies. They saw then that that approach would make lives worse, not better. And this is indeed what has happened. When we look at what has happened, even myself personally, I began my work in the 90s inspired to bring the success of a capitalist America to the failures in our nation's low-income communities caused by socialism. And what we have today, unfortunately, is the reverse of what I had dreamed to get. Mainstream Americans are looking more like the poor communities destroyed by socialism than the other way around. Our communities are collapsing, our suburbs are collapsing, so my work must continue. And the Old Parkland Conference has inspired me to continue with even more zeal. Oh, the press can say whatever they want to, but the special responsibility of African Americans, even with our unique and troubled history, is to show that evil occurs because men sin, not because the vision of American freedom is flawed, as we hear so much, almost hourly, from progressives. The diversity, equity, and inclusion answer on race matters can only be to seek, in the words of Lincoln, a new birth of freedom for every American of every background.